We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm very excited to welcome our next guest on the interview series, Maria Selvaggio. She is the Vice President of People at M1 Finance. Maria, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger. Do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Christina. I am really excited to be here and really excited to have this conversation. I'm Maria. My pronouns are she and her. I am the VP of People at M1 Finance in Chicago. My team leads recruiting, HR, and L&D for M1. I've been leading and growing people functions at tech companies in Chicago for the past 11 years. I love pre-IPO, rocket ship type growth companies. I love building things from scratch. And then as far as the question of what did you want to be when you grow up, I always have had a hard time answering that question because I don't think that I really knew. I had a lot of different answers like artist, lawyer, author, just kind of anything that I can think of as a job. But when I was 13, Survivor came out for the first time. And from the moment I saw it, I was like, oh, I have to be a reality TV star. And obviously it didn't happen, but I am here in HR instead.
There you go. I'm also a fan of Survivor. We love to see it. You look forward to the future. I would love to know from your perspective as a people leader, as a leader in HR, when you think about this dynamic, ever-changing thing of company culture, what are qualitative and quantitative ways you keep a pulse of what's happening or that you measure it?
Yeah. So first, I want to start off by explaining how we think about culture at M1. We think about culture in terms of a pyramid of needs, similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you may have learned about in a Psych 101 class. At the top of the pyramid are perks, things like free food, ping pong, whatever you think of when you think of flashy tech companies. At M1, we don't really focus much on the top of the pyramid like that, those perks. For us, generally, those are nice to haves, but not things that are going to keep someone at a company long term. And then at the base of the pyramid, we have non-negotiable things that you absolutely need for yourself and for your families. And so those are things like salary warranted for the role that you're in and benefits that care for your families. And so for us, we want to make that level of the pyramid just totally automatic for our employees. We don't want them to really have to think about it. So we make sure that we have great healthcare benefits, and then we try to keep up with the salary as it changes in the industry. And the next level up, we call it the logistics level. Those are logistics like how much flexibility you can have, your ability to work remotely, how much PTO you get, how long the commute is from your house to the office. It's really like aspects of the culture that are not likely to change, and employees kind of opt in or opt out of that. It either is going to make sense for them or it won't, and that's okay. And then above that, and then right below perks, we have what we call our three culture tenants. And this is the sweet spot for our team. This is where we like to put our time, our energy, and our budget. And when our team is focusing on culture, this is where they're really focusing their time and things that we believe keep employees at M1 long term. Those things are one, having a good manager, two, the ability to see yourself grow at the company, and three, work that leaves you feeling fulfilled and challenged. So when we're measuring our company culture, we're really measuring ourselves against those three tenets. We're measuring how employees feel about their manager in our engagement surveys. And we're focusing on how many people are moving laterally within an organization or being promoted from within. And then we have a couple other metrics that we use with our company values, like our value of transparency that we measure in our surveys as well, to really kind of focus on that. But that's really where we're how and where we're measuring our company culture.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that you laid out those kind of employee hierarchy of needs, similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as well as you were talking about. I want to dig a little bit deeper to ask kind of how and why this is part of your people, talent, and culture strategy. And you mentioned the three kind of tenets that you focus on, which I definitely agree are really important in terms of growth and making sure that you feel fulfilled and challenged, and that you have a great manager. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So about a year and a half ago, we were going through this high growth period, and we were trying to attract talent. Our employees, they kept coming to us with different perks that they were learning about from other companies. And my team was really struggling to know what they should say yes to. So I really built that hierarchy of engagement to help our team coalesce around a shared strategy, because it seemed like the perks that we were adding weren't really moving the needle on our engagement scores. And we were really spinning our wheels, trying to keep up with the latest and greatest things that were out there. And so it has become a really important part of our people culture strategy. I've presented the hierarchy a few times to our entire company, so that they can understand the strategy and they can have like the right expectations for our team. And everyone agrees that they want career growth and they want great managers and they want fulfilling work. And they know that's where we are going to focus our time and efforts. It just really helps get everybody on the same page.
It does help to get everyone on the same page and be able to reference kind of these back and have that common language as well. One of the other things that really stood out to me was really investing in having a really great manager. We've all heard the phrase, you don't leave a bad company, you leave a bad manager, or, you stay for a really great manager
Mhm.
as well. When you're thinking about really empowering folks to lead a team, perhaps for the first time, how are you kind of resourcing and investing in these managers to lead their individual teams?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, like I said, having great managers is so important to us as an organization, and we do feel like it's one of those tenants that retain top talent. So over the past year, our team has put a huge focus on developing our managers. Some of the specific things that we've done are we created a manager training. So all managers go through it, and then we conduct it twice a year for our new managers. It's a training that we built in-house, and it's 8 sessions over 2 weeks. It's based off of Google's Project Oxygen, which is a free resource online. We took that resource and we used it as a base, and we added things and changed things until it made sense for our organization. The training includes a feedback training that's based in part on the book Radical Candor, a hands-on emotional intelligence training that provides tactical solutions for managing like high stress, high conflict situations, and a training that specifically goes over our performance reviews and our performance ratings. And there's a lot more to it than that, but we've gotten really great feedback on it, and it really seems to help our managers, especially the new managers. And then the other thing, our team has a really tight relationship with our managers. We turned our recruiters into hybrid recruiters slash HR business partners, and that keeps them on the pulse of what's going on with every team. So our managers, they trust our team and they come to them with problems, and our team is able to help them navigate those problems and find really people-centered solutions. So managers have been a huge focus over the last year. They will continue to be a focus over the next year, and we're excited to see how the managers continue to grow.
Yeah, training is definitely a key piece to empowering folks to do their best work, have a space where you can practice like any other kind of skill there as well, and have that environment to do so with your peers who are also managers or who are also kind of facing the same challenges too. You mentioned being in potentially high stress or high conflict environments, and I don't necessarily think conflict is a bad thing. It's inevitable to come up in any relationship as well, but only 39%, according to one study, of folks kind of reported being trained or coached in handling this workplace conflict. Can you dig in a little bit to share a little bit more about how you help folks really navigate potentially hard conversations and how to grow from there?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say that we're perfect at this, but at least we're aware that we have some work to do. Like our manager training I mentioned, we have that emotional intelligence training module. And so all of our managers go through it, but we also opened it up to the broader organization. We kind of pared it down and made it a lunch and learn. We've then conducted it a few times for teams that wanted to go through it together. And the training really helps everyone have the same language to discuss their challenges as a team. But like you said, like healthy conflict is so important. And we really want to make that the norm. And we want to have our people not shy away from those difficult conversations. And so we focus a lot on like the feedback aspect of this. And we're trying to reframe feedback in our organization to be a gift rather than a criticism. And our L&D team has been really pushing a culture of feedback. Teams go through the feedback training together, and they learn techniques. And then L&D is posts little reminders all the time on how to give feedback. Like they wrote the SBI feedback training, the feedback module on all of the whiteboards in the office. That stands for situation, behavioral, and impact. And then our HR team is always available to help managers or employees workshop feedback before it's given. Like I said, I know we have a lot of work to do, but I hope that we put good tools in place that we can kind of build on that and make it even better in the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Building upon it, being open to changes that may occur as well, and creating that foundation where folks really want to give that feedback, whether it's positive, negative, constructive, anything in between too. And then when you have that feedback, how are you demonstrating that you are listening, whether it's through action or following up with team members as well? I think a lot of people have really innovated because we had no other option to since the beginning of 2020. How have you kind of thought about really innovating or doing things differently in the employee experience at M1 Finance?
Yeah, I have kind of a fun one to share. So before the pandemic, we were 5 days a week in the office, only hire people locally, company, probably like a lot of companies out there. We had to shift pretty quickly to being totally remote and then hiring people all over the country. And so now we're kind of trying to navigate this hybrid world, which I imagine a lot of the listeners are trying to figure out as well. But moving remote caused us to lose those moments where you just like walk up to someone's desk and ask them a question. And so everything had to become a Zoom meeting. And all of a sudden, you're just swamped with Zoom meetings and you have so many Zoom meetings all the time, and no really good way to minimize that without losing that collaboration. So we instituted something called No Meeting Tuesdays. And this is a day for just heads down work, no meetings. And the people on our team, they really love No Meeting Tuesdays. Everybody tries to protect that time. But it also makes Wednesdays really meeting heavy. Um, and so we decided to do Wednesday as in-office Wednesday. And so we just started it a few weeks ago, but people are coming in on Wednesdays. And because Wednesdays are naturally meeting heavy, you're able to meet in person with people and really maximize the time that you get to spend in the office. It's not something that is required, but it's encouraged. If you're planning to come into the office at all, Wednesday is a great day to do that. And then we also schedule happy hours and lunches and other events on Wednesdays to try and make it really exciting for people to be in.
I think those are really good examples too of creating a structure and framework where people feel like they can get those heads down work done and also kind of open up space for not being in back-to-back Zoom meetings and having that Zoom fatigue too. I think something else that we've seen a lot of people lean into or change is the role of leaders, really the importance of leading with empathy when you have these really exciting times where you can innovate and also be rough or not so great times as well. We've seen unfortunately, some reductions of force and layoffs, and potentially more coming in the future, depending on the industry as well. I do want to ask, in terms of initial planning steps, what do you think about as an executive, really leading this process through kind of all the different moving parts that are happening during a really trying time for the company?
Yeah. First off, I totally agree that empathy needs to be executed not only in the good times, but also the difficult times. We've seen such an interesting change over the last year. And I think so many HR professionals, myself included, have just gotten used to operating in these crazy boom times. Like we couldn't hire fast enough, and we're throwing perks and money at candidates to attract them to come work here. And you have like these limitless budgets. And now all of a sudden that shifts, and we're trying to figure out how to conduct rifts and layoffs. And it's really a test in our ability to demonstrate empathy. And it's time to kind of walk the talk and put our money where our mouth is and all the other metaphors that are out there. But for us, empathy was really top of mind when we did a riff earlier this summer. We were just trying to keep in mind that these are actual people losing their jobs, but we do still have to execute on these business initiatives. The most important thing for us was as soon as we realized it was happening, we can't drag our feet. And so we went from realizing we needed to do it to conducting the RIF 3 weeks later. We didn't want to drag it out. And this allowed us to offer a more generous severance than we would have been able to offer if we had been wishy washy about it. So we gave everyone 12 weeks as a baseline of severance with 3 months of healthcare continuation coverage and uh, career consultation services. We also had our managers write letters of recommendation, and we sent anybody who opted in uh, to our VC partners and our industry contacts to help them find new jobs faster. Um, and so really trying to like take care of the person who was being affected. And then the other thing that was really important for us was around messaging. We wanted to make sure that everyone understood it's not you, it's me. And we were really vulnerable about admitting our fault. We had hired a team for a boom time, and that was on us as a leadership team. Like our eyes may have been a little bit bigger than our stomachs, and that's not the fault of you as an employee. And we also made sure that everyone affected got a one-on-one time with their HR rep and a manager to ask questions and have everything explained. I mean, the bottom line is that empathy was really important. And that was the hardest week of my career. But I think we led with integrity, and that was really the North Star and what made it um, go as well as it did.
Yeah, it sounds like to really lead with integrity, you have to really be proactive and intentional with, communication, action, all levels of the experience as well, and provide the best support possible too. I know every organization is different, every company is at a different point in their growth stage as well. Are there any either public company examples of companies who have, made that external communication, or you've seen internal communication go really well with folks after a reduction of force or layoffs like that? You don't have to name any names for sure.
Yeah, I can name a name. Airbnb has a public statement from a past RIF, and we really tried to emulate that. I think it's such a great example of vulnerability and empathy. I sent those articles and that statement to our leadership team, and I was like, "This is required reading," like in all capital letters, just making sure that like everybody understood. Like, here's the way that we want to do this, and here's how we lead with empathy. Making sure all the leadership team was on board with it.
I think having that example as a framework is really helpful too. This is an example of communication that is really leading with empathy, and this is something that we would like to kind of do in our own way as well. We've had kind of conversations around this at the podcast. One of the questions that comes up is for the folks after a reduction in force, there's kind of tension. You mentioned it was a hard week, for example. For employees who stay after the RIF at the company, how do you think about really creating space for folks to feel confident in the job as well and feel like they're not fighting for their jobs in the future?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important aspect of conducting the RIF. We're an organization that values transparency, and we even had a learning moment in the weeks leading up to the RIF, being like, did we miss an opportunity to tell our employees that this was a possibility? We've had a few times even before that leading up where we were saying things like everything's going to be fine, we're going to make it through this, and in those moments we realized that we weren't honest enough, and so we really felt like we were going to have a huge opportunity to build back the trust of our employees that stayed. And of course that makes sense. Of course they'd feel that way. The people who stay at the company, they aren't affected directly by losing their jobs, but most of them have lost colleagues and friends. And then they're looking at their workload being like, there used to be a lot more people doing this. And then on top of that, there's a fear that, maybe this is the first of many. And like, there's a lot of anxiety around that. But for us, it was really important to admit the mistake. Like we should have been more honest. And because of that, we did everyone a disservice. We've had a few all hands meetings, the first one being the day of the RIF, where our CEO explained the reasoning behind the RIF and was really open about what we are going to need to do to succeed in the future, and not have to do another RIF. And so that put everything back in the hands of the employees. Like we have everything that we need to succeed, and every single person is a part of that. And now what we focus on is really creating this transparency around our business initiatives, like telling everyone the good and the bad and making sure that people understand how they fit into the grand scheme of the business. And hopefully that creates a level of of transparency where they don't necessarily have to be so worried about um, where their job is going and all of that. And then we also made sure that managers held space for their employees. And then, of course, the HR team had to be available for a ton of conversations, which the team all needed. I think the week of the RIF, I spent like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day on Zoom talking to people, um, which was exhausting, but I think really needed and valued by the people who I got to speak with. And then, of course, after that, I had to focus a lot on my own self care, but that can be a conversation for a different time.
Yeah, self-care all around, just the needed time to really talk about how you're feeling, how it's impacting your day to day. And you're right, a lot of folks who are at the company, their workload's increasing, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of emotions happening as well. Maria, is there anything that I didn't specifically ask throughout our conversation that you would like to highlight, or any key takeaways you would like to underscore for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a really difficult few years for everyone, and making sure that you're extending empathy is so important. We need to give our employees grace and be flexible with them and remember that there's a real person there that deserves to be tended to. But we also need to focus on ourselves, like setting boundaries and giving ourselves grace when everything isn't perfect. I think it's just important to remember that and probably hear it from another HR professional that it's okay to to need a little bit of space. And then, of course, the second thing, if anyone's interested in talking more in depth about anything that I mentioned or riff strategies or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
I appreciate that, Maria. I think it is important to remember to extend empathy to others, to yourself, and also compassion and grace. Thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Thank you for having me.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening at All Voices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.